Welcome back to Real Estate Today. Today we are talking about investment properties, rentals, flippers, second homes, all types of different investment properties.
Flippers. How I think I get that call at least once a week.
Well, I think when you're talking about investments in real estate, you have to decide what direction you're going to go. Do you want to build your rental portfolio, or are you looking at something that's a short-term hold that you're going to flip, for lack of a better term,
we
and to make money?
We are seeing that, distressed sales, not arm length transactions. We're starting to see those pick up a little bit, but we're still not in a situation where we're getting, tons of foreclosures. The fact of the matter is, the market that we're in, that's not what we're going to see anytime soon.
No, but there's always distressed properties out there, so you just have to decide what your level of comfort is.
What level of distress are you willing to take on?
I was talking to an agent yesterday, and he literally told me that they had already removed most of the vehicles out of the yard.
Yeah, opened the door. I heard an agent yesterday say, I opened the door and snapped a picture and turned around and left because it smelled so bad. And Cindy and I laughed. We're like, we like that. It smells like money. Yeah, it smells like money. So definitely some opportunity there. But I don't think a lot of quote unquote investors, especially straight out of the gate, realize what they're getting themselves into. So
yeah, most people that when you think about flippers, it's not always as simple as just updating. A lot of times, if somebody could afford to keep a property up, then it wouldn't end up in the situation that it's in. So a lot of times you have to go in and do a lot of major work.
Yeah. If you missed it before, we're joined, you can't see him on camera on Facebook Live, but Stephen Shelton with Cleveland Insurance is here with us today. You and I've looked at a few flippers, and it's a good option. It's a good way to, like Cindy said, either build your rental portfolio or turn around and make some quick money, but it's a good way to get into the investing side. But I do think for a lot of people, it's the only route that they consider. It's when they talk about real estate investing, I think, like you said before, TikTok, the internet has made that seem like such a feasible option for most people.
HGTV.
Yeah, and in this area, it's just not.
No, and I think that you're only as good at flipping as your real estate professional that you hire to help you, because that is that's a different game to get into, and so that there's a lot more that goes into it. The neighborhood, the area, just so many more things, and things that you guys see that the normal layperson that wants to flip a home would have no idea about. And so I just think that I would caution anyone, before you decide to buy and flip a home, I think you should have a real estate professional that would definitely be there by your side to kind of guide you, because you may see something that, as they said, smells like money, but they may smell something else. And so
and I think some of the mistakes that people make when flipping is, you have to know the comparable properties, the properties that you're competing with, and what they're like. So many people that are new to flipping may go in and fix a home. Yes, they over-improve it the way that they would want it to live in it. And what you have to do is actually improve it to the level of the competition, not exactly something that you may have in your home. Just because you put a very expensive chandelier in there doesn't mean it's going to bring more money. Right.
Well, I just think you shouldn't, and that's where you guys would come in without question. You're not trying to redesign someone else's dream, and that you have to allow them to bring their own vision to it. You're just trying to get it, no matter what condition it's in, into a livable condition that does meet the expectations of the buyer.
Of the neighborhood, yeah, absolutely. I think we have a caller, Stan. Hey. Oh, fantastic. We've got your guy here. Shoot, what you got? Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll work from the front of that question. So if you're living there, if it's your primary home, you can have what's called either an HO3 or an HO5. That's a standard homeowner's policy. Anyone that's in the insurance industry can sell you one of those in the state of Tennessee. How much you should have is you want every property you buy or invest in, whether it's to live in or to rent, you want to make sure that you're insuring it to value, insuring it to what's called replacement value. What you paid for it, what you can sell it for, none of those things have any impact on what it would take to replace your home. So that structure, if we're using $200 a square foot to replace a home right now, just for round numbers, and you have 1,000 square foot property, you need at least $200,000 on that property to replace it. What happens is you can become what's called underinsured, and you have what's called a co-insurance penalty. So for the same example, if you have a home that should have been insured for $200,000, you insure it for $100,000, and you have a total loss, you've only insured it up to 50% of the value. That means when the claim happens and it's a total loss, you only get 50% of what you insured it for. So where you needed $200,000, you only get $50,000. And so that's very important to try to keep all your properties insured to value. Now, your insurance advisor or professional, they help you with this. They have tools that the industry uses. Marshall Swift Beck, there's some others out there that they use to keep up with what it costs to reconstruct or build homes in today's value. So it's always good to do an annual review with your insurance professional to make sure that those values stay in place. You do have inflation guards in Tennessee that will automatically increase your dwelling's property each year. They try to keep up with that. So as long as up front you did and gave the information needed to properly insure your home, it's up to the insurance company then afterwards to make sure your home can be replaced. Only in situations where you build onto the home or maybe finish a basement do you have to contact your insurance provider and inform them of those things. Moving on to the umbrella question. The umbrella question is, umbrellas are for your liability. If you have one property or 4 properties or 10 properties, an umbrella is there to provide you an additional $1 million up to how many ever millions you need, but up to at least $1 million in additional liability. An umbrella policy would lie over the top of. It's kind of a bucket of cash that sits over to the side. If your primary coverages for your home or your auto or your watercraft or your rentals, if you have a liability claim and the sum of the funds that the judge or the court deem necessary to satisfy the other party's needs exceeds your primary, your homeowners, your auto, exceeds that liability limit, then the company goes and gets the rest of the funds from the umbrella. And again, that has nothing to do with the property itself, only the liability of that. And I hope that answered all those questions.
Lots of info, Stan.
Sure. So two parts of that. So first is you would have, when you purchase, or if you have your real estate professional, Jody or Cindy, help you buy a property, you then want to make certain that you have at least the personal liability. We always say $500,000 is what kind of our standard. Between the pricing between $500,000 and $300,000 is usually $20 or $30 a year. It's not a lot. And so if you feel like you have assets that exceed that $500,000, so if your assets, your 401ks, your retirement, your other properties, I would make certain that my liability limits were up to what I feel that my net worth is. And so if you have multiple rental properties and you say, hey, altogether, my net worth is $1 million. So I would make certain that your liability limits matched that $1 million. So if something were to happen, the courts would look at you and say, okay, Stan has done everything he needed to do to make certain that if something were to happen, that he had enough coverage through his insurance provider to take care of the other party in case of an accident.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your call, Stan.
Along those same
Yes, sir.
Along those same lines, I actually I had a friend that bought a property at auction, so he got a really good deal on it. That's back several years ago when auctions were really, when foreclosures and things were really going inexpensive. And he insured it for the amount he bought at auction. Then he had to evict the tenant, and the tenant was disgruntled. So on his way out the door, he lit the thing on fire. And so when insurance was called into it, they just went ahead and paid him out max because there was no way they could rebuild or do anything with that property for the amount that he had insured it for. So they just handed him a check for the maximum amount that he had it insured for, and he had to come out of pocket for the rest.
Yeah, definitely. Again, it's always, and again, you can have a property that's worth $100,000, that you guys can sell it for 175, but it may take to rebuild because remember, even in that fire situation, you have the demo cost, you have haul away cost. There's so many other costs that go into than just building the home. The only thing you usually don't have to do on a tornado loss or a hail loss or a fire loss is the groundwork.
Right.
So your groundwork is usually it's the only expense you don't have. So, but yeah, you're exactly right. You've got to insure these properties for what it would take to replace them, rebuild
And that's
them.
an expensive lesson to learn that a
Yeah.
lot of people don't know. You don't
Yeah.
know, you don't know until you know. So that's why it's so important, like Stephen said, you want to get a team of people, really, realtors, contractors, attorneys, your insurance agent. Those are discussions that you really need to have on the front end before you ever pull the trigger. So,
And I would say this, I'm sorry, but real quick about, if Stan's still listening, just because your insurance agent says you have replacement cost, that does not mean that your home can be replaced. There are companies that sell replacement costs that go up to 100% of what you have what's called coverage A, the dwelling cost. So you may have a company that will pay, if you have 100,000 in coverage, up to 100,000 in replacement. There are companies that pay up to 110%, 125%, 150%. There are companies out there, there's 3 or 4 in the state of Tennessee that offer guaranteed replacement costs, which means there is no cap on what they'll pay to replace that dwelling. So make sure you understand what you're buying. Just because you hear the words replacement cost doesn't necessarily mean you have what it takes to rebuild your home.
absolutely. We are going to step away and take a quick break. We do have a caller on the line, Jeff, if you'll hang with us. I promise as soon as we get back, we'll get to you, talk more about investments on real estate today with Cindi and Jody. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so we have no idea.
We don't know what Jeff's going to ask.
Well, we don't know if the microphones are hot. So,
Stephen, be quiet.
It's basketball
well,
time.
talking
It's
to
not my
that,
first
they
rodeo.
can tell us.
Tennessee basketball.
I've already made that mistake multiple times.
WGOW Radio.
So, Case, I see that you're watching. If you can, yeah, you can hear us.
Make sure your home's ready for it. From flickering lights to chilly nights to busted pipes, Lee Company is here to help. Heating, air conditioning, plumbing, electrical, or any fix-up you need, we've got the experts ready. Head over to LeeCompany.com. That's LeeCompany.com. Remember, Lee Company, all you need, so you can enjoy the holidays worry-free.
Hi, I'm Robert Parker. I built a number of brokerage firms.
Oh, got it on the other side.
Most qualified buyers. What makes the difference today in your area? The same thing. Customer marketing to the right buyers. In Chattanooga, agent I trust is Cindi Jody. Her personalized marketing plan attracts more buyers and sells more homes for more money. She can even give you an instant offer. Get the best marketing for your home. Go to RG423.com. Put more money in your home.
Everybody needs Farm Bureau Advantage HMO from Farm Bureau Health Plans.
I need it.
Get a $0 prescription deductible and $0 copays on most generic prescription drugs.
You know I need that.
Farm Bureau Health Plans has been caring for Tennessee for more than 75 years.
I need people who care.
That's why we offer a spending card for up to $150 per quarter on over-the-counter healthcare needs and up to $3,500 dental coverage.
I need all that.
Call 877-500-FDHP.
You're watching us on
to talk
Facebook
to a
Live.
trusted Medicare
Sorry, you can't
advisor
hear the
at
commercials.
Farm Bureau Health Plans. Hurry. Enrollment ends December 7th, so call today.
I plan to call right now to schedule an appointment.
Farm Bureau Health Plans. Plan on us. Farm Bureau Health Plans is an HMO with a Medicare contract. Farm Bureau Health Plans depends on contract renewal.
yourself for the ultimate holiday deal with Consumer Cellular. Snag an incredible 50% off the Iris Flip when you buy before December 17th, making it only $34.50. The Iris Flip is all the phone and camera you
Jeff
need with
hung
a
up.
user-friendly design. The perfect flip phone
Right
companion.
on us. Maybe
Plus,
call
you'll get
back.
Or
nationwide coverage
text.
and
I
always
was letting you know you can
free
text.
Score 50% off when you use promo code RADIO50. Head over to consumercellular.com and use promo code RADIO50 during checkout to score this deal.
If you're 19 or older with certain underlying medical conditions such as asthma or diabetes, you can get vaccinated against pneumococcal pneumonia, a potentially serious bacterial lung disease that can disrupt your life for weeks. If you're 65 or older, it is also recommended you get vaccinated against pneumococcal pneumonia. No matter the season, talk to your doctor about vaccination today and learn more at lung.org/protect yourself. A message from the American Lung Association in collaboration with Pfizer.
Furnished by the American Lung Association.
Hi, I'm Barbara Corcoran. Built the number one brokerage firm in New York City by marketing luxury homes to most qualified buyers. What makes the difference today in your area? The same thing, custom marketing to the right buyers. In Chattanooga, the agent I trust is Cindi Jody. Her personalized marketing plan attracts more buyers and sells more homes for more money. She will bring you an instant offer. Get the best marketing for your home. Go to RG423.com and put more money in your pocket. Taking one picture for your home doesn't have to be your only picture. I'm Barbara Corcoran, and especially in today's current market, having a local real estate agent who offers great marketing and options customized to fit your needs.
Hey, Stephen, what's this button do?
The agent I trust is Cindi Jody.
I don't know what it is.
Instant offer 24 hours of
What does it say above it?
Dump.
Dump?
What's
Uh-huh.
this? It's probably the same as ours.
Would you like me to push one?
Absolutely.
Have
Let
to
it
be
fly.
delayed.
I wouldn't push that one. Oh boy.
Wow, now it's flashing.
Jesse,
Trust the experts at the Richardson Group to help you turn it into one of the easiest. Don't believe me? Just Google Richardson Group and see the reviews for yourself.
Welcome back to Real Estate Today. I'm Cindy and this is Jody, and today we have Stephen Shelton with us, and we are talking about investment properties.
so Cindy, one of the things that I hear all the time is, does it cash flow? Does it cash flow? Does it cash flow? And what's my ROI? And it always kind of cracks me up because a lot of times the people that are making those statements to us don't really understand what that means. So
Mhm.
why don't you explain to us what ROI means, and what do we mean when we say something cash flows? What kind of numbers? I know this have changed a little bit over the years that we've been doing this, but what does that mean to your
I
average
think
investor?
kind of what a simple thing that most people say is just the easy 1% rule, which is if you buy a home, and when you're looking at rentals, if you buy a property for $100,000, they expect to rent it for $1,000 a month. That's kind of difficult to do in today's market, even with rental prices up. With the value of properties going up so much, it's kind of hard to hit that rule. But I mean, they've used the 1% rule for the 24 years I've been in real estate. We've always heard the 1%
1%,
rule.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important, guys, to think about the fact it sounds cheesy, but it's so true. The statement that you shouldn't wait to buy real estate, you should buy real estate and wait. Because even though it is cyclical, it's up and down, it is always historically has been on an arc.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the value is going to increase. The values are going to catch up with what's happening in the rest of the country, which Stephen mentioned earlier. Like prices, we're still well below the national average in this area. So prices are not necessarily coming down. Things will level off. And while that property may not cash flow, quote unquote, right at the moment, statistically, if you hold on to that as part of your portfolio, it will. And especially if you're going to do a multifamily situation where you're living in it, you're killing two birds with one stone.
Well, in a normal market, a balanced market, in this area over the years, we have seen average appreciation at about 3 to 5% per year. So you're not just looking at the monthly money, but you're also getting appreciation on that property. So you've got to take that in consideration too. And there's actually investment calculators out there. So you can plug in the price of the property and see where it would be in 5 years from now.
Well, and let's talk about that from a financing, a paying for it standpoint. Okay, so it may not cash flow right now, but there is potential. And what I'm seeing a lot of right now is people that are purchasing a property, they're purchasing a property that someone has owned for 20 years. So the rental rate that that person is charging right now is not on par with what is standard for the area. So right off the bat, if those people are month to month, you can raise the rental rate to get you closer to that
Yeah,
1%.
depending on what it says in the lease and if you have an existing lease in
Sure.
place.
But financing it, like we talked about just a little bit, we touched on it. How am I going to make that happen? Obviously, if you have cash, if you've got cash in hand, if you can pull equity out of an existing property.
Yeah, if you're buying a property as a rental that you plan to keep, then either if you live in it, that's going to be the least expensive way to be able to buy it, because then you can do an FHA loan or something that's going to take less money down. If you are looking at reselling a property, then that's completely different.
Well, and that down payment, it's not necessarily a 20% down nowadays anymore. You can get into something with less money. You are going to need a down payment, and you're going to pay a little bit higher interest rate, but you can get into it for less than 20% in a lot of cases. Now let's talk hard money lenders. That's something that
private lending is what hard money is. So that's usually individuals or companies that are just it's private lending. So you're not going through the traditional steps of a mortgage. You are getting a lien placed on the property, but it's from an individual.
And that's a good option for those individuals because they're making more return on their money than they would if that money was sitting in a bank account.
Yes.
So, if their high yield checking or savings account is 5% and they're getting 6 or 7% on a quote unquote hard money loan, that's a better investment for them, and they have a lien on your
property. You're going to
property.
pay a little higher interest rate on those, but you're also going to have less closing costs. And usually that's going to be a loan that's short term. So you're looking at, a 12-month loan. So that way, if you're using private money to do a flip or something, I don't think you'd necessarily use it for a rental unless you need to do improvements to it, and then you're going to turn around and refinance it.
Well, and while we're talking about cash, I do think it's important. Stephen mentioned earlier having kind of a rainy day fund. It is important to understand the expenses that are going to come along with owning a rental property. And it's important to make sure that you do have a little bit of a fund set aside for things like vacancies, property taxes. When you have during that vacancy period, are you paying the utilities? What about advertising expenses and things that it's going to take to get somebody in it? Are you going to manage it yourself, or are you going to hire a company? I know for most people, I would say statistically, people end up with rental companies because it takes a lot of the headache away from that. It provides a buffer between you and the tenant, but it does cost you on average, what would you say, 10%?
Yeah, I would keep it probably a cushion of 10% for repairs, replacement, vacancies, so that you are ready and you're not surprised if a property needs a new hot water heater or, a big ticket item.
Well, and I think, from a number standpoint, when we were pulling up the information for today's show, the average apartment rental in Chattanooga is ranging just under $1,100 a month, all the way up to about $1,830. And an average home rental in the Chattanooga area is between $1,092 and $1,868. So those are pretty hefty numbers. And if you go that 1% rule, you can really get a lot of house and still get decent return on that investment. But you need to understand that it's not going to be a situation where you close one day and you have a tenant who's paying the next.
Right. And then if you're buying a house, that's going to fall into the 1% rule with that, most likely you're going to do some repairs before you can get that amount of money at it.
That would be, between $100,000 and $180,000 house, which we know
is very difficult
Stephen,
to do.
How many of those there are laying around in town?
Absolutely.
So, when it looks...
Well, and when you're first starting into it too, if you don't plan to occupy it, but you may have to start off small. So you may start off with homes that are 2-bedroom, 1-baths, older homes, and then hopefully the goal would be to get enough of those and cash flow enough and build up your reserves so that you then can sell those and move into larger properties, and then sell those and move into maybe apartments or things that have more doors so that you're cash flowing more.
Well, and you know, operational costs, lease outlines, what is the tenant paying, what are you paying, you know, unforeseen repairs when the HVAC unit decides to go out. Those are all things that it's important that you need to need to be ready for, need to be
And a
prepared
very
for.
popular thing right now is short-term rentals.
Airbnbs.
Yes.
How many of those? So, Mr. Insurance, how does that work? How do we insure an Airbnb or
Well,
a short-term rental?
it's changed dramatically over the past 5 years. When it was first introduced, it was, insurance companies were just going crazy because there's no way we want random strangers coming in at all hours of the night to sleep and leave. But that they now, if you go through an Airbnb type product, these online companies that control it, they have insurance now built in up to $1 million for any property that you list with them to rent short term. So insurance companies now will actually, they'll insure these things with no worries whatsoever. We've got people in Cleveland and greater Chattanooga area that have multiple Airbnbs. 5 years ago, it was a nightmare when they called and said, I think I'm going to put this through Airbnb. And you're like,
Does that cover, like, is it contents? Is it just
so the
structure?
$1 million would be the structure itself, and so the liability, they have a comprehensive policy basically for everyone that runs through there. So it is much easier now. It's not a big deal whatsoever if you decide you want to Airbnb your property. To insure those now is very, very easy, very, very common.
Is it very expensive?
No, it's actually about the same as it would be for. There is most companies have an endorsement, just an attached coverage they place on there. That's of course a little more expensive, but it's nothing, about probably 10% more than your traditional rental.
Perfect.
Airbnbs, they make good money, but really you're getting into the hospitality business. So you are, they're a lot more work, a little more expense because you're going to have the cleaning, the advertising, the furnishing, linens, all kinds of things like
It's
that.
just a lot of work. I mean, it's good money,
Mhm.
but you better be
Yes.
prepared to put the
Yeah.
time and effort into it. So I think we need to take a break. Jesse's giving me the look. So we're going to take a quick break, pay some bills, and we'll be back to wrap things up on Investments Made Easy.
Imagine this holiday season putting a wreath on each grave at the Chattanooga National Cemetery. For just $10, your special wreath can be purchased by going to WGOW.com. It's wreaths across Chattanooga. Business being updated. One name to remember: Elevated Exteriors.
I pushed that button and now the thing is flashing.
So you can make an informed
Yeah, I
decision.
know.
Roofing, windows, siding, decking, gutters, they do it all.
Pretty close. So the last 10 minutes, I'm over here. I messed the whole thing up.
Do we push another one? Would you like me to push
I like
done
flashing.
and see what
I
happens?
like flashing buttons.
And Jesse's not said a word yet. Would you like me to hit done and see what happens?
No.
You say no?
My luck, the floor would cave in, my chair would disappear.
We just dropped.
Yep. Gone.
Oh, that's what that meant.
With Skyrizi, 3 out of 4 people achieved 90% clearer skin at 4 months. And Skyrizi is just 4 doses a year after 2 starter doses. Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and
We're gonna have
tuberculosis.
about
Tell your doctor if you have an infection
5-6
symptoms
minutes
such
when we
as
come
fever,
back.
sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine. Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more. Hi, I'm Barbara.
I think we just kind of do an overview. I don't think we have time to talk about anything. Hit all the different types that
You lead off.
difference today in your area? The same thing, custom marketing to the right buyers. In Chattanooga, agent I trust is Cindi Jody. Her personalized marketing plan attracts more buyers and sells more homes for more money. She can even give you an instant offer. Get the best marketing for your home. Go to rg423.com and put more money in your pocket.
Want your house sold for top dollar? Contact the Cindy Richardson team. It's all part of Keller Williams.
Did you know there's a timer out here that you can hit?
Each Keller Williams office is
Did you want to hit reset?
Google Richardson. That's Richardson.
How long has there been a timer here?
Hi, I'm
The
Barbara
whole time.
Clark. I built the number one brokerage firm in New York
I guess I never
City
said on this side. There's all kinds of buttons.
by
That's why you have some.
today in your area.
What's
The
that?
same thing,
Oh, that's another
custom
timer.
marketing to the right buyers. In
Somebody hit
Chattanooga,
reset on that
agent
one.
I trust is Cindi Jody. Her personalized marketing plan attracts more buyers and sells more homes for more money. She can even give you an instant offer. Get the best marketing for your home. Go to rg423.com and put more money in your pocket. Taking one cash offer for your home doesn't have to be your only option. I'm Barbara Corcoran, and especially in today's current market, having a local real estate agent who offers great market and options customized to fit your needs is smart. In Chattanooga, the agent I trust is
See
Cindi
which one
Jody.
you can do.
What is that?
Oh, it's just a little bit of shower, about 20 minutes or what, when it clears up.
Get the option that's right for you. Go to rg423.com. Hi, I'm Barbara Corcoran. I built the number one brokerage firm in New York City by marketing luxury homes to the most qualified buyers. What makes the difference today in your area? The same
Little Mark
thing,
Cuban's leaving short
custom
term.
marketing to the right buyers.
Little Mark Cuban's leaving
Chattanooga,
short
the
term.
agent I trust is Cindi Richardson. Her personalized marketing plan attracts more buyers and sells more homes for more money. She can even give you an instant offer. Get the best marketing for your home. Go to rg423.com and put more money in your pocket.
Call 1223. If you missed a part of this show, you want to catch up on past shows, find them on Facebook and YouTube at Richardson Group, and they're also available on Spotify. If you have real estate questions, call the experts of the Richardson Group at 790-7979 or online at rg423.com.
Welcome back to Real Estate Today. I'm Cindy. This is Jody, and we've got Stephen Shelton in here with us today.
Stephen Shelton in here with us of Cleveland Insurance. Stephen, why don't you tell people if they want to get in touch with you about insurance, where can they reach you?
The easiest place would be clevelandins.com. Very simple. Everything's there. All our agents' information's there, so easy.
Okay, so anywhere in Chattanooga, Cleveland, surrounding area.
Anywhere in Georgia, North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky. So
All the
all the
things,
places,
all
all
the
the
things.
places.
All right, so let's just kind of touch on the types of investment properties that are
Yeah.
available.
Yeah, we didn't manage to get over all the different types today, but there are a lot of different ways to invest in real estate property. So rentals, of course, are something that help build your portfolio and your long-term wealth. And then you have flippers, which are distressed properties that you're going to rehab and resell for a profit. Then you also have vacation rentals.
That's a whole topic for another day, but lots of ways. I think the biggest discrepancy or distinguishing feature there, is it's got to be something that makes sense. You can't move down the street and buy a quote unquote vacation property. In our area, fortunately, we're surrounded by lots of areas that can be considered that. You could purchase a property on the lake or on the river that's 20 minutes down the road, and that
Typically,
makes
the
sense,
vacation properties do not have as much ROI as you would see in rentals and things, because you are getting a certain amount of joy factor with those.
I was going to say, a lot of times that's something you're using
Right,
yourself
yeah.
as well.
Typically, your vacation property is not going to be your first purchase. And then there's short-term rentals, which is going to be your Airbnbs. And again, those can be very profitable if done correctly, and you do want to check into local and state rules on those.
Yeah, we're starting to see a little bit of a crackdown on those, especially in certain areas. And what you'll see a lot of times is like deed restrictions against those more so than county ordinances. You'll see like the neighborhood won't allow short-term rentals, but it's a very lucrative option for a lot of people. A lot of people do it well. I know a lot of people that kind of straddle the line. They do, really short-term, and then they'll pair that with monthly rentals during slow times of the year. but a really lucrative option for people in
Yeah.
our area.
And we are going to be doing a investment series for education to the public. So on our links on Facebook, you can actually register for the class. Our first one is going to be how to get into the business. So we'll be doing a little deeper dive into each of these.
Really in depth, yeah. So a
Yeah.
good way to get information if it's something you're interested in. Visit us at the Richardson Group KW Cleveland Facebook page. All the information is there. We appreciate you joining us today, and we'll see you next week on Real Estate Today with Cindi and Jody.